Azuchi Momoyama Period. The Azuchi Momoyama Period, Azuchi Momoyama Jidai, aka Shikuho Period, 1568–73, 1600 CE, was a brief but significant period of medieval Japan's history that saw the country unified after centuries of a weak central government and petty conflicts between hundreds of rival warlords. Oda Nobunaga, r. 1568–1582 CE, would establish himself as the military ruler of Japan, and his castle at Azuchi, east of Kyoto, gives the period the first half of its name. Nobunaga's successor Toyotomi Hideyoshi, r. 1582–1598 CE, would continue his work to unify all of Japan, and his base of Momoyama, south of Kyoto, provides the second half of the period's name. Hideyoshi came unstuck with his two failed invasions of Korea, and the period ended with the succession conflict that would see Tokugawa Ieyasu establish the Tokugawa Shogunate, 1603–1868 CE. The Muromachi period, 1333–1573 CE, had been one of turmoil for Japan, with the Ashikaga shoguns never quite in control of all their provinces. The biggest crisis came with the Unnin War, 1467–1477 CE, a civil war that destroyed Heiankyo and created century-long aftermath of bitter infighting between rival warlords. It would require one warlord to gain total supremacy for Japan to enjoy the peace and a stable government again. Oda Nobunaga would turn out to be that man. Nobunaga had expanded his territory gradually throughout the 1550–60s CE from his base at Nagoya Castle in Owari Province, central Japan, as he defeated all comers through a mix of sieges, battles, and diplomacy. He finally seized the capital Heiankyo in 1568 CE and then exiled the last Ashikaga shogun, Ashikaga Yoshiaki, in 1573 CE. With these two actions, the Azuchi Momoyama period begins, hence some scholars choose 1568 CE as the start date, while others plumb for 1573 CE. In 1579 CE, and now in control of all central Japan, Oda Nobunaga established a new headquarters at the magnificent Azuchi Castle outside the capital on the edge of Lake Biwa, hence this period of history's first name. Nothing remains today of the castle except its stone base, but it was the first to combine a plush residency with defensive features and have the huge multi-story castle keep that became the norm in Japanese medieval castles. Unfortunately, Azuchi Castle was burnt down in 1582 CE but was later rebuilt. Nobunaga was able to defeat and maintain his position above rival warlords and to continue to expand his territorial control thanks to his large army, which was well equipped and which included the gifted general Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who would become Nobunaga's successor. Nobunaga was an innovator as he was one of the first Japanese leaders to adopt firearms, his armies having a corps of 3,000 musketeers who, in battle, fired in rotating ranks to create a continuous and devastating volley of fire. Nobunaga's army was also the first to have each man, including the infantry, issued with a full suit of armor. The territories Nobunaga gained were given to his loyal commanders to govern, and the lands of captured warlords were frequently redistributed and relocated to break old ties of loyalty. In order to secure his grip on power, Nobunaga attempted to reduce the income of his rival daimyo, feudal lords, by abolishing the tolls on all roads. He boosted his own coffers by minting the first Japanese currency since 958 CE and standardizing the exchange rates between all the different coins then in use. Another lucrative source of cash was to release merchants from their guilds and have them pay the state a fee instead. From 1571 CE an extensive land survey was begun to make the tax system more efficient. Another policy was to confiscate all weapons held by the peasantry from 1576 CE onwards, the so-called sword hunts, something his successors would also do. Meanwhile, Nobunaga continued to expand his territory. His goal was nothing less than a unified Japan. Not for nothing did the warlord emblazon on his personal seal, Tenka Fubu, or a unified realm under military rule. It was not just rival lords who suffered under Nobunaga's ambition. Many Buddhist temples, rich and powerful institutions at the time, several of which could field small armies, were attacked, too. The most infamous example of this policy was his destruction of the Enryakuji monastic complex on the sacred Entihai near Kyoto in 1571 CE. 25,000 men, women, and children were butchered in the attack. In contrast, Nobunaga encouraged the work of Christian missionaries in Japan as he saw the benefit of European contacts which brought trade and technology such as the firearms he put to such devastating use. Nobunaga's death would be avenged swiftly when his foremost general Toyotomi Hideyoshi defeated Mitsuhide at the Battle of Yamazaki and declared himself Nobunaga's successor. Hideyoshi would rule Japan from 1582 to 1598 CE. Hideyoshi's choice of base at his Momoyama Castle, Peach Mountain, in Fushimi, south of Heiankyo, would give the period the second half of its name. Castles, which had sprung up everywhere in the troubled times of the preceding Muromachi period, were now clearly more for show than defense, although many had impressive wide moats and the introduction of firearms to Japan did necessitate a greater use of stone, thicker walls and windows for musketeers, often triangular, just in case a castle were ever attacked. However, as with the famous Himeji Castle, 1581 to 1609 CE, most castles were never actually attacked. Many castles, too, continued to create ever-widening settlements around them, and some of these castle towns would eventually become major cities like Edo, Tokyo, and Osaka. Hideyoshi commanded a force of some 200,000 men and, like his predecessor, he successfully combined military campaigns with diplomacy amongst his rival daimyo to establish himself as the ruler of most of Japan in 1590 CE. In a 5-year period beginning in 1585 CE, Hideyoshi had attacked western Japan, Kyushu, and Shikoku. As with other military leaders, Hideyoshi still sought legitimacy from the monarchy. To gain royal favor from the emperor, who had no real power of his own, he gave money for court ceremonies and rebuilt the palace at the capital. Hideyoshi ultimately awarded himself the title of Taiko, retired regent. Hideyoshi is noted for his policies and reforms when he governed Japan. To fund the state, he extracted taxes from the peasantry and the commercial activities in larger cities. In 1591 CE, Hideyoshi developed a rigid class system with different levels for a warrior, shur, farmer, no, artisan, ko, and merchant, sho, the often called Shurnokyo-sho system. Each class was given an importance based on its production value, and no movement between the levels was permitted, meaning that, for example, only a young man born into a samurai family could become a samurai. Another consequence was that samurai could not be both warriors and part-time farmers as they had been in the past, and so now they had to choose one way of life over the other, making them wholly dependent for their pay on their lord if they did choose to serve as samurai. The system, although a little confused in practice and certainly not rigidly imposed everywhere, would remain in place right through the Edo period, 1603 to 1868 CE.